Don't go near that bridge, Mommy. They'll throw you too. He said it like he'd been there before. My job is to know the stories of my town. As the lead archivist for the County Historical Society, I am the keeper of memories, the custodian of a collective past documented in brittle newspapers, faded photographs, and the looping cursive of forgotten letters. I thought I knew every secret our corner of the world held. I knew about the Great Fire of 1912, the political scandals of the Prohibition era, the founding families, and the forgotten farms. I was an expert in what was. But my son Noah taught me that the most terrible stories are the ones that were. Never written down, our life was one of quiet, academic peace. My husband, Michael, is a park ranger, a man whose domain is the physical landscape, the forests, the rivers, the trails that crisscross our scenic valley. My domain was the landscape of time. Together, we were raising Noah in a world we believed was safe, understood, and thoroughly documented. He was a gentle 5-year-old, a boy with a quiet disposition and an empathy so profound it sometimes felt fragile. The bridge was our special place, Harper's Creek Bridge, an elegant, single-arch stone bridge built in the 1870s, now the centerpiece of a walking trail that Michael himself helped maintain. It was a place of breathtaking beauty, especially in the autumn when the maples that lined the creek below turned to fire. It was the backdrop for countless wedding photos, the destination of Sunday strollers, a symbol of our town's serene, rustic charm. It was on a perfect, crisp October afternoon that the bridge became something else entirely. Noah and I were on a walk, the air smelling of wood smoke and damp leaves. He was chasing a monarch butterfly. I walked to the center of the bridge, leaning against the cold stone parapet to look down at the sparkling water. "Come see the little fish, sweetie," I called out. He stopped, his face suddenly pale. He looked not at me, but at the bridge itself with an expression of pure terror. "Mommy, get back," he said, his voice low and urgent. "It's okay, honey. I'm safe," I laughed, pushing myself up. That's when he screamed it, a raw, piercing sound that shattered the afternoon peace. "Don't go near that bridge, Mommy. Stay away from the edge. They'll throw you too." The word hung in the air between us, impossibly heavy. "Too." I froze, my hand still on the stone. I knelt down to his level. "Who will throw me, Noah?" "It's just us here." He looked past me, his eyes focused on something on the empty bridge, something only he could see. His voice dropped to a terrified whisper. "The shouting men. The men with the torches. They don't like our kind." In that moment, he was not my 5-year-old son. His voice held the chilling authority of a witness, the ancient fear of a victim. The idyllic bridge suddenly felt like a crime scene. That night, after I put a deeply unsettled Noah to bed, I began to dig. My professional and maternal instincts had merged into a single desperate need to understand what he had said. The historian in me needed a source, a fact. The mother in me needed to believe he was just imagining it. I started with the official records, the ones I knew like the back of my hand. I searched the town archives for any incident related to Harper's Creek Bridge. I scanned a century of newspaper articles on microfiche, looking for murders, riots, accidents, anything. The bridge's history was pristine. It was a story of picnics and ribbon-cutting ceremonies. There were no shouting men. There were no torches. There was no violence. The official record was silent. This lack of evidence, which should have been comforting, was deeply unsettling. The conviction in Noah's voice had been too real. The details were too specific. The nightmares started a few days later. He would whimper in his sleep, his small hands clenched. He'd whisper fragmented things. "The wagon is bumpy. It's so dark. Caleb is scared. I have to hold his hand." One night, Michael lit a pine-scented candle in the living room, and Noah refused to come downstairs, crying that he didn't like the burning smell. The smell of pine torches. Caleb. The name was new. A friend from the past? A fellow victim? I redoubled my search, but now I was looking for something different. I started to think about Noah's phrase, our kind. The clean, official history of a town is often the history of its victors, its majority. The stories of the marginalized immigrants. Fringe political groups, unpopular religious sects often exist only in the margins. If at all, I moved away from the sanitized newspaper archives and into the unindexed personal collections. I started reading the private journals and letters of the town's first settlers. It was a maddening, painstaking process, and it was in the spidery, almost illegible handwriting of a 19th century circuit minister that I found the first thread. In an entry dated 1883. Reverend John Abernathy wrote of a fever of hatred that had gripped the town. He lamented the persecution of a small, ascetic religious community that had settled in the valley, a group he referred to as the Pilgrims of the Silent Path. He described them as peaceful, hard-working people who kept to themselves, but whose different ways had bred suspicion and fear among the townspeople. He wrote of a night of shame, a brutal reckoning at Harper's Creek, after which the Pilgrims were gone from this valley forever. He provided no other details, as if the event were too terrible to commit to paper. The Pilgrims of the Silent Path. I had never heard of them. They didn't exist in any official town history. They had been erased. Using the Reverend's journal as my guide, I dove into the raw data of the census records. And there they were. In the 1880 census, a cluster of about 15 families with unfamiliar surnames. Their occupation listed as farmer, their place of worship listed as none. In the 1890 census, every single one of them was gone. Their property records were stamped abandoned. The final piece of the puzzle was buried in the county coroner's office, in a cardboard box of uncatalogued reports from the 1880s, records deemed too old and unimportant to digitize. I spent a Saturday surrounded by the smell of decaying paper, my hands covered in dust, and I found it. A thin, brittle folder tied with faded red string. Inside were 8 coroner's reports, all from a single week in October of 1883, the week of the Night of Shame. 6 John Does, 1 Jane Doe. The cause of death for each was listed as accidental drowning, or injuries consistent with a fall from a great height. The location where the bodies were found, downstream from Harper's Creek. My heart hammered. In my chest, this was it, the proof. The sanitized history of my town was a lie, a cover-up for a brutal massacre. A mob of shouting men with torches had driven these people to the Bridgeman, women and children, and thrown them into the creek below. I was about to close the folder when one last page caught my eye. It was the report for the 8th victim, a boy estimated to be 6 or 7 years old. Unlike the others, he had been identified by a small hand-carved wooden tag tied to his wrist. But his next of kin were never found, because they were likely lying in the same creek bed. So his name was simply recorded, then forgotten. The name on the coroner's report was Caleb, the boy whose hand Noah had to hold. I sat there in the dusty silence of the archive, the world tilting beneath me. My son's nightmares were not his own. His fear of angry voices was not a quirk of his personality. It was an echo, a psychic scar left by a century-old trauma. He wasn't just remembering the event. He was one of them. He had stood on that bridge on that terrible night. I am a historian. My job is to give voice to the dead, to tell their stories. I never imagined one of them would be my own son. The bridge is different now. I see it from my office window, a graceful curve of stone against the trees, and I feel a cold dread. It is no longer a symbol of peace. It is a monument to a massacre, a tombstone hiding in plain sight. I anonymously forwarded my research to the State Historical Society. Perhaps the official story will be changed. Perhaps a small plaque will be erected. A quiet admission of a forgotten sin. Noah doesn't talk about the shouting men anymore. He doesn't have the nightmares. It's as if my discovery, my acknowledgement of his truth, has finally quieted the ghosts inside him. But the silence they left behind is a heavy, sorrowful thing. I look at my sweet, gentle boy as he sleeps, his face relaxed in a way it never was before, and I am filled with a love so fierce and a sadness so profound it threatens to break me. I am his mother. I will protect him with my life. But I can no longer pretend I know him. Whose child am I tucking into bed each night? Mine? Or a boy who once had a different mother, a different name? A boy who has been falling in the dark for over 100 years, and only now, in the safety of my arms, has finally landed?